is going to be his answer?
His answer is he wants to build the best brand that's going to live forever and make money and not think about the economy and not think about, the Arab world coming up and, having teams. So,
This is a very novel strategy, all of a sudden. Nicely done.
Good morning, everybody. So I think
I also, by the way, with the singing, that you were brave enough to just go completely out of tune with everyone else. Is that something you've done from a young age, or at some point you decided I'm just going to not go with the group?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay,
Go
so
for it.
the legacy aspect of this would come in from the athletes database. So whether we like it or not, Real Madrid identify these athletes, buying them, whether they move teams or not. This is an even-if strategy. Even if they move to other clubs, when you look at, let's say, a big player now, you'd say, where did they actually begin? Real Madrid will forever be in the picture. And that's where it actually starts. So whether we like it or not, in the history books, when you're like, oh, this player is so talented and they're this big, but we'll always remember that they first started at Real Madrid, and that's where the first investment started.
Wait, that's the legacy that Real Madrid wants to build? That they're the club where some of the best players once played?
Yes.
They don't want to have a legacy that they're the best club, period?
It continues. So they say that we have the best athletes. We can not only just identify them, but we can also develop them.
Okay. Yes?
Good morning, everyone. With me, I feel like it's more of a PR stunt or a marketing strategy. The more quality players you produce, the more young players they want to associate themselves with Real Madrid. So if they push more of young players and development and get star players, obviously every parent would want to be to sign their child into the development club.
It's a PR stunt. Very expensive PR stunt. But they just want to get some marketing done here by getting these players in the door. Hi, good morning.
So, if you have a look at the overall, the business, and when you started off, you mentioned business, and actually football is a business. It's an incredibly intensive industry, capital intensive. And the one thing I noticed about Real Madrid, they're actually promoting an insane number of younger players into their first team. So their youth development has become a source for their first team. And I don't think a lot of youth development academies are promoting their talent into the first team as aggressively as Real Madrid. And their whole homegrown policy is part of making every single asset of Real Madrid sweat in terms of what financial and monetary value does it deliver to the bottom line. So that's why I think the strategy of looking at the younger guys, it makes more financial sense in terms of promoting your own. And if you have a look at the key big players which they sign, what international players are signing into first team, the money is just ridiculous what they pay some of these players. Whereas if you bring them in young, and I mean like Bellingham didn't come cheap, but he's making a huge impact on the market as well. So I think their head's in the right place. I think it's a great strategy and it's definitely going to work for them.
Okay. Great. Yes? Why just raise your hand when you can utter sounds as well?
I think it's a great strategy. When you look at a team investing in younger players, you're also looking at longevity. Because with the younger players, yes, they may come through the academy. I mean, you look at a team like Barcelona, a lot of their young players that won the Champions League, the league under Pep Guardiola, they all came through La Masia, and the culture was already embedded in that team, and they were able to have more longevity with those players at the helm. Yes, eventually some of them did move on, but you have a much more longer time with those youngsters within your ranks, and you're able to win, because at the end of the day, yes, it's a business, but for you to attract players and become a competitive league, you need to be a winning team, and Real Madrid is known to be the UEFA Champions League Cup kings. And that's because they've always had the greatest talent, but also investing in young talent. You want to be able to hold on to your best talent for as long as you can and win the important titles that actually come in and inject more money into your league. So if you're also investing in this, your academy, yes, you get that development fee and all of that, but I think at the crux of it, I think teams are looking to have more longevity with the players that they are, the young players that they have, because eventually they're going to move on. And just to comment about Saudi, yes, Saudi's coming in with the money, but Real Madrid is a heritage brand. If anyone is going to choose, they'll only go to Saudi for retirement money. But if you're going to choose which team you want to play for in terms of profile, in terms of your brand, it's still Real Madrid because of the kind of brand it is and what it comes with and how it can elevate you as a player. Endorsement deals, UEFA Champions League. Saudi doesn't play in UEFA Champions League. And I mean, now there's Club World Cup, so you want to be in a club that opens options for you. So I think for me, for long-term and longevity, I think it's a great strategy.
You sound like a football player.
I'm a sports broadcaster.
Okay, so I'm going to stick with you for a little bit because you said a lot. You talked about longevity. So if we, this is what you get when you utter sounds. If we think about a player over time, right? So this is time. And so think about player ages. When does a soccer player start to become valuable? At what age?
Now it's younger, maybe like 20, 21, 22 now. Earlier now. Yeah, much 18, let's say 18.
Okay, let's say 18.
I mean, yeah, now, yeah.
Yeah, he was 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lamine Yamal.
Yeah.
Does anyone know? Do we know who he is? He plays for FC Barcelona.
Yeah.
He was 17 when he made his debut. And then when you talk about retirement, when do players retire?
Generally, let's say 35, if
35?
you're lucky.
How old is Cristiano
If
Ronaldo?
you're, no, but he's an anomaly. That's what I'm saying, if you're lucky. Let's say 38, but if you're lucky. Because Ronaldo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, those are like anomalies, but generally across board, it's like your mid-30s, yeah, 35, 37, if you're not injury prone and if you're not forced out.
Okay, and then you have some guys that still play when they're 40, but those are the exceptions. So if this is the timeline, if I think about value of a player over time, value to the club, what does it look like? If I try to sketch in this figure, value of a player over time. I see people make all kinds of signs now with their hands. Oh, you're saying like this? It keeps going like this? You're raising your hand, yes, go for it.
I think it starts slowly and gradually goes up.
Yeah.
And then there will be instances where maybe it might dip a little bit and then it'll pick up again. So it's like a Mexican wave.
The concept Mexican wave is lost on me. This might be a
Well,
cultural thing.
the bell curve,
Oh.
the bell curve just goes up and comes down.
Oh,
But the
it's a
Mexican
bell
wave, yeah, but the bell curve goes up and it comes down.
But a
But
Mexican
then the
wave
Mexican wave
doesn't.
is continuous until you eventually go down every time.
Okay, so this is the bell curve. I had expected that chalk to show more white. Let's try this. So this is the bell curve. But you're saying it might not be like this. It might be more like a Mexican wave. I'm definitely going to steal this one and bring it back to Harvard, which is something like this. Would that be fair to say?
Something like that.
Okay. And then how do we explain Lamine Yamal?
So right now in his career, he's definitely on the up. He's on the up.
But he's one of the best players in the world, so isn't he here already?
Well, maybe when he started on a steep height.
He went like this?
Yes,
Okay.
in my opinion.
In your opinion, okay. And then, what is typically the length of a career of a football player? Because you talked about longevity. What is it
About
typically?
10, 15 if you're lucky, but let's say 10 years, 10, 12 years.
10
generally.
years? Is the
Generally,
average?
Could be But if you're lucky, if you peak early like Yamal, you've got a bit more longevity. Yes. So let's say 15 years. Let's say 15 to 20. For him.
By the time he is,
But guys, average footballers, not everybody's Yamal. Like those are like
Definitely
those
not
once in a
average.
lifetime footballers. But let's just say generally the average. I would say 15 years.
yes.
If you're lucky.
The average would be 15 years?
If you're lucky, I would say. Because if you're retiring around 38, 37, and if you what age? But started what age? Okay, if you start at 17, okay, so let's say 18
He
years.
can go
Let's say
20
18
years easily.
Okay, 20 years.
But
If you're
he's
lucky.
definitely the exception.
Yes, he
The
is.
average career of a soccer player, football player, looks more like this.
Yes, that looks right.
I would bet, I don't know the exact number in football, but I would bet it's closer to 5 years on average. Because we're thinking of the superstars, but we should be thinking about the guys that are barely making it. Right? Because there's a lot more like that, so the average is actually a lot shorter. In the NBA, I do know the numbers. The NBA basketball, professional basketball league, guess what the average career length is for an NBA player? 23 years? I just told you that it's 5 for a football player.
It could be 2, coach. 3 years.
4.8. Average career for an NBA player. This includes LeBron, who's at it for 23 years, right? But there's a whole lot of guys that maybe have 1 or 2. In the NFL in the United States, it is 3.5 years. 53 players in a roster, and so you would think there's lots of room, but they churn players very, very quickly. Right? In the WNBA, which we're going to be talking about later, it's shorter because there aren't that many spots. And so they go through players quite fast as well. So the average career for athletes, I hope I'm not making anyone think twice about the career that they've chosen, but the average career for athletes is very, very short. Right? And of course, again, we're thinking about the stars that are there for a long time, that are doing everything right, but an average career is really short. This notion of the fact that value first goes up and then comes down, and that there's some sort of if you look, that there's some sort of average, and that it usually does look like the bell curve more than the Mexican wave. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. If we look at data, it does look like a bell curve. This I've called the talent life cycle. And if you've done a little bit of business education, you might know that people talk about a product life cycle. Right? This idea that if you're, say, in the business of producing cell phones, you can't keep selling the same cell phone. At some point, people will realize technology has changed. And so now I need a different cell phone because the cameras are better. So I'm going to trade in the old one and get the new one. There's a life cycle to a product. There's also a life cycle to customers. If you run a nightclub, then you typically realize your customers are going to go the moment they find someone they want to marry. Right? Because now the customer, they set up and they go, I can't convince my wife that I need to go clubbing still. So that was it. Average life cycle for a nightclub customer in New York is about 6 months. I don't know if they found their wife or if they just realized they'll never get a wife, but the idea is that it's a short customer life cycle. If you're in the business of sports, you want to think about the talent life cycle. If you're the talent, definitely you want to know what this looks like. But also if you're a club like Real Madrid and you're making significant investments in players. Because what, again, if we take the talent life cycle, what is Real Madrid trying to do? What are they saying with their shift in strategy? If you explain this in terms of the talent life cycle, what is Real Madrid trying to do here? Are they... When they say we no longer want to bet on the finished product, what do they mean? They want to create their own, and so what does that mean in terms of the life cycle? Right, they were here, right? Making these, again, don't look at the Mexican wave, but look at it like this. So they said, we are going to be making bets here, And we know that that's going to be very costly because the players are at the peak of their life cycle. We're going to be buying Cristiano Ronaldo when he's 24, 25. We're going to be getting Beckham when he's 26, 27. Right? That's when we're going to be buying them. That was the old strategy. The new strategy is to realize there are these people that look really promising, and we're going to try to get them at a younger age because then they're cheaper. Right? So we buy Bellingham now for 100 million euros, but if we had waited 2 more years, he would have climbed up and he would have been even more expensive. Right? That's what they're trying to do. And so when you see it in that light, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think they will also be trying to capitalize on the longevity.
Yeah, they're trying to, because if they get them younger, they have them longer, absolutely right, or at least they can benefit from their investment longer if they structure the contract right.
What? Come on.
Yeah.
So they're actually trying to extend the lifestyle of that, not just the player, but I think the club. And in South Africa, we have something called the elite development pathway in some of the sports. It's particularly successful, I think, in rugby, where young talent is identified. They're brought into camps, they're also given game time, and they then last through those top elite squads for a lot longer. So by the time you then reach another World Cup level, you've got a big base of good players.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because if you think about your players as a portfolio of acquisitions that you've made, if you make the right acquisitions, then your portfolio will last longer. Right? That's how they're looking at this.
Sorry, Prof, there's a hand that was behind you for a long time. I'm trying to, the lady in the gray in front of you, and then her hand was up.
Where are we talking? Oh. You see, you have the advantage, you can actually just grab me.
I'll do that next
tackle
time.
me.
Yeah. I should have.
Go for it.
Good morning, everyone. So, look, I'm not an athlete, I'm a psychologist, so I come at this from a different angle, of course. But what I was thinking about the recruitment of young players was like the mental health, I guess, challenges associated with recruiting someone. I mean, Yamal can be as good a football player as he is, but like his frontal cortex still isn't fully developed until he hits around 25. So I wondered, like, what are the reputational risks around getting really young players into such a high pressure environment? Like, what happens if you burn a penalty? Like, if you're 17, are you going to be okay with that? And what happens if then a player that young has an actual like breakdown or crisis or burnout? I mean, I'm sure the clubs have all kinds of support systems in place, but I'm also imagining you're like relocating from Uganda and now you live in Spain and you're away from your family and you're actually technically in a lot of ways still a child. So does Real Madrid run a reputational risk if they have players on there who off field maybe go out and do crazy stuff like you would when you're 17, like get incredibly drunk or like get in like media scandals, which would be normal for someone who's that young, but yeah, maybe reputationally hard to manage for such a prestigious club.
Really important point, absolutely. I'm going to take it a little bit broader because I was actually going to go there. If we think not of value, but we think of risk, risk of the investment, and not just reputational risk, but risk more generally, right? Of which mental health and our people are going to be able to deal with the pressure is certainly a really big one. If I try to sketch risk over time by player age, what does that look like? Is it also a bell curve? How should we think about the concept of risk of investing in players over time?
Good morning. I'm so happy that Lady in Grey brought up reputational risk because I was thinking...
You will forever be known as Lady in Grey. You can't go for any of the clothing options ever.
No, I won't. This is it now, guys.
Excellent.
Because my point was going to be they also risk having a negative brand perception because they've always been known as that team that gets the best in the world, whatever the cost. I read an article after reading the case study where they were actually comparing them to the Ferrari of the sport world.
Is there a brand risk? So that's the risk for Real Madrid in terms of the overall club, which is definitely something to think about, right? They were known for getting these really, really high performers. But how should we think about risk over time?
I think also just like injury risk, like age and body risk. Age and body, an aging body
Yes.
risk. So I think that would deteriorate over time differently. The higher, the older you are, the higher the risk of injury to the body.
So if I draw a risk, then it goes, it's a straight line down?
Yeah.
It's a straight line down?
Prof, I think for me, also having had a lot of conversations with coaches, they let's try that again. They prefer younger players because they feel from a discipline standpoint, it's a lot better to mold the younger ones than the older ones. Because I know with one of the local teams, they've recently did a complete overhaul of all the older players because of the issues of discipline. And the older they are, it's a lot harder to tell a player not to drink or not to come to training drunk. But if you get them young, develop them, and you get the philosophy, the culture embedded within them, it's a lot easier to mold them. So maybe, yes, you might have those few rotten apples, but I think for the most part, you may have younger players that are far more focused, who may give you a much longer lifespan than bringing in older players who are expensive, but you can't really tell them anything. So I think also, that also poses as a risk, but I don't think having a lot of young players poses as too much of a high risk in terms of behavior. I could be wrong, but that's my opinion.
So we shouldn't worry about investing in these younger players.
No.
She spoke about culture. Well, I was going to come to it because culture is important. You can be as good, but if they get them younger, they get into the culture, and when at their peak, it's easier because they're used to the culture. And I'm also saying risk cannot just go down because risk is a probability. So there's a chance that it might not happen, and then you also need to have mitigation in place. So if you know that there's a risk of this and that and that, you also have mitigation plan in place. Obviously, based on the history, they will know that it will be an injury which cannot be avoided. But in terms of drinking and whatever, you can maybe have camps away from, but have your mitigation risk in place.
Okay, so far we've said injuries are more likely to happen later on. Here we might have sort of this notion of can they deal with the pressure, right? The reason why we pay so much money for these established people is that they bring a lot of value, but also that they have the lowest risk. If we invest in a player at age 28, we know exactly what they're going to bring because we've seen them perform at a high level for years. If we make a bet on an 18-year-old, we don't really know, right? We have a hunch, but we don't really know. So if I were to try to sketch risk in the same way, it probably looks something like this, right? That risk is the lowest at your peak years in terms of injuries, in terms of dealing with the pressure and all these other factors. It is high when we're investing in these young players. We could have a Bellingham on his hands who goes and does great things. We could have a Vinicius who goes and does great things. But we could also have a Rainier who no one knows because he didn't do great things. But we did invest in him the same way we invested in Vinicius, right? So there is risk involved in betting on these younger players. Doesn't mean you can't go wrong when you bet on a 28-year-old. It can still go wrong, but the chances of it going wrong are far less. And then as they get older, the injury risk will increase. And there's also this sense of at some point they just drop off and they realize at age 40, it's going to take me longer to recover from games and I'm really not as fast anymore, right? So risk is this sort of inverse of value. And so for a long time, Real Madrid has said, this is the sweet spot we want to play in, low risk, high value, and we're willing to pay for that. But increasingly, as we've said, they realize, well, the economics are looking a little bit difficult, so let's move here where the players are cheaper, but the risk of them not working out are greater too. Yes, I see your hand. Go for it.
Just to add on the economic risk, I think also with like the big elite like the European and American clubs, when they recruit, especially from the global south, there is this risk of extraction, because I think players that then get sort of like recruited into those big clubs, they may hold on to their maybe African heritage, but their economical value, like it doesn't really trickle down to the global south, which can also like sort of like pose a risk of extraction, which is, I believe, is also like a replication of colonial powers.
Wow, those are some deep statements. We can't get through all of those, but there's definitely some issues that are at play when we're getting people from abroad, right? And traditionally, South America is a big draw for European football clubs, and increasingly Africa is, and we've had some really stellar African players, but it's definitely not a given that they will work out, just as it's not a given that the homegrown players will work out as well. How does Real Madrid make money, by the way? I mean, we've been talking about them as a business. How do they make money? If we look at the economics for Real Madrid, what are the main sources of income?
Media rights.
Media rights, is that the main source of income? We have commercial, we call it. So commercial revenues is both sponsorship and merchandising. What's merchandising? Selling jerseys, right? Or anything else that has Real Madrid stamped on it, pens, whatever it might be. And then what's the other source of income? Match day revenues. What are match day revenues? Yeah, ticket, concessions, right? Anything you do in and out of the stadium. So these are the three main sources of revenues. And at the time of the case, this is 122 million. This is 306 maybe. I'm doing this off the top of my head, and this is 403, which yields $831 million in revenues for Real Madrid on an annual basis. Right, this is in Exhibit 1. So what drives these revenues?
Success.
How can success on the field is the main driver? Is that right? Because what goes up when we're successful on the field? I see a hand.
Thanks, Prof. But I think everything is becoming a possibility because the club has got a very good football philosophy. Because if you look at the way it performs, it wouldn't be able to attract sponsors, it wouldn't be able to grow their fan base, to be able to buy their commercial brands, t-shirts, memorabilia and all, if the philosophy is not good, because the philosophy is the performance, and the performance brings results. So I think they review a lot in terms of how to perfect their philosophy. That is why they are winning year in, year out in terms of campaigns. Thank you.
So if I perform better on the field, then all these revenues go up? I sell more tickets? Isn't Real Madrid pretty much sold out every day? I maybe sell more. Do I sell more drinks and food at the stadium if we win? Doubtful. I mean, people are just as hungry. Maybe they're even more likely to go and get some drinks if the club is losing. Do I sell more in terms of media rights if I win? How does that work exactly? Advertising, but advertising would be in the commercial side of things. Merchandising is some media rights is some broadcaster paying us money through the league, not to us directly, but through the Spanish league, so that they pay us money so that they can broadcast our games. Those are usually 5-6 year contracts at the minimum.
I think partly yes and partly no. When you're that big, you can sell yourself, but you don't qualify for UEFA if you don't perform and qualify.
Okay.
So performance does become key for you to attract more media rights.
That is a very good point, right? So we have to distinguish between domestic and international media rights. Domestic is pretty fixed because these are these long-term contracts. But if I do well in Europe, then I get more money from the Champions League. If I get through the different rounds in the Champions League, and you said they're the kings of the Champions League, right? So the Real Madrid has been doing very well. That means they get a significant amount of money at the end of the season. If they are thrown out in the group stages, there's less money for them to be made. So performance is a key driver of media rights there. And it drives commercial. I sell more jerseys if I win? Absolutely. So what if we keep losing? Are we lost? Or are there other drivers of these revenues that we haven't talked about? Is it only the performance on the field that drives these revenues?
I think it is completely interlinked, and it's also about the value of the brand. And if you have a look at Real Madrid, it's actually about expanding your brand into other target market areas. Like they've been aggressive into China, their retail strategy is very aggressive. And in fact, they've got a mega store in the middle of Barcelona, just a few doors down from the Barcelona store, and it's quite a cheeky retail strategy. And their retail strategy is massive. They've got a stadium strategy. They only play 4 games a month at home stadium. So when you say match day revenue, it goes beyond just match day. That stadium is active every single day. It's in the middle of Madrid. The connections into the stadium on rail are excellent. When you step out of the railway station, there are kiosks selling membership. There's kiosks, you can buy tickets to the game, you can buy tour tickets. At any given stage at the stadium, there are 20 tours running, and the tours start at the front of the stadium and they end up in the retail store. So everything is driven towards creating revenue. So it's just not one single thing, and it's about creating this incredible super brand that is attractive, that is growing the supporter base, and you want to be part of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the infrastructure that you built around it, it's the brand that you have. Those are all drivers of these different sources of revenues, and particularly commercial revenues. Is there one other one? Lady in gray?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm thinking for Real Madrid, it's also their membership structure. The fact that they've got like this atypical members pay an annual fee to support the club. They've got like 100,000 people, right? Like paying every year to like be co-owners or like co-members of the club. So I think fans are like fans who like they diversified the use of their stadium by making the field able to be moved. I thought that was a very smart economic move, because then they could use the stadium for concerts and make more revenue that way.
Absolutely, right? They can get Taylor Swift to perform in the middle of Madrid. And so that's another example of infrastructure driving commercial revenues relatively directly. Yes?
Prof, I want to ask, because I don't think well, I agree with what everyone's saying, but performance alone won't drive like profits. Because when you think of a team like Manchester United now, that has been going through the slumps now for for like a decade, and they had to retrench a lot of people because the brand, the company, the football club was losing so much money. But I mean, you still watch the games, they still packed to capacity, people are still watching, but it's lost a lot of money because they've had to retrench so many people. So I wonder, in terms of what's driving now the commercial value, is it also just the loyalty because of just the power of the brand over the years, just how strong the Manchester United brand is, and that there's so many just loyal people who still are hopeful that the team will regain their glory days? Is that something that you can monetize? I'm not sure if you can quantify loyalty into revenue, but I'm just thinking for a team like Man U that finished at what, 15th, 14th?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. So what we see is there tends to be a lag in these effects. right? Because if you think about how you gain new fans, and when these fans actually become paying fans, there's usually a bit of a time that passes. So if you think about people that are like 12, 13 years old now, kids that are discovering football and they realize their favorite team, it's very unlikely that they'll say, my favorite team is Manchester United. Their dads might have picked Manchester United because they remember the days of Alex Ferguson as a coach and them winning everything there was to be had. And so those people locked in and they became Manchester United fans, and they'll be fans most likely for the rest of their lives, and they'll keep buying these jerseys. But the new fans that are coming in are looking and saying, what are the best performing teams? And they might say, Chelsea were just world champions, so I'm going to support Chelsea. Or Manchester City, they've had a stellar record in the last few years with Pep Guardiola, so I'm going to be supporting them. Right? And so they will keep buying jerseys over time. So performance on the field might not be something that drives your revenues today, but might be something that drives your revenues tomorrow or the day after, right? That's the idea, that there's a bit of a delay very often in this. The one factor we have not yet discussed, which I think is a big driver as well, is the presence of superstars. The moment you were going to say that, I took your point. I'm so sorry.
You did.
Go for it.
Good morning, guys. I was going to say that they have a way to pick their players, even though they pick them young, they select them intentionally so. And the way their image rights is structured, they get a lot, or they get 50% split of however big the players become, and sponsorship, personal sponsorship for the players, all image rights, they get 50. They make a lot of money from that partnership with their players.
Absolutely, right? If you have a superstar on board, then you see your commercial revenues go up and up and up. And you're mentioning Lionel Messi. When he joined Inter Miami in the United States, the jersey became instantly the best-selling jersey, not just in football, but across the board in sports. If you walk around in Miami now, you see the pink jerseys all the time, right? So a superstar, even if you're not winning, because they have won only one title, and not the most important one since he came on. So it's not necessarily about performance, it's just about we have a superstar. If you get David Beckham, you'll sell millions and millions of dollars worth of jerseys the day that he joins. That they are risking a little bit now by going for these younger players, because Vinicius now is big, but when he came on, he didn't sell a whole lot of shirts for them. And Jude Bellingham might be the exception, but everyone else was not a proven star. And so they weren't really driving their commercial revenues as much, right? So stars is a big driver of these economics as well, and especially of commercial. And so we have to think about what that does to their strategy. And so it's almost you're guaranteed to have a certain amount of revenues if you have these big stars, if you're willing to take big bets on superstars. And if you don't, then you're setting yourself up for a bit of uncertainty, which actually gets me to a point I wanted to get to. So see these two as one board with momentum in the middle. Because we've been talking about strategies, and we can really think about a whole continuum on which we can decide to play as a club, right? So imagine a club that is the absolute best example of a talent development. So they are focused entirely on getting young people to come on board, maybe at even an age of 12 or 13 or 14, and developing them into world-class players, right? That's on this side. On the very end of it, so imagine this continuum. At the very end of it is a club that is the summit of superstar acquisition. So what they do is they look at the talent life cycle and they say, we want someone who is here. And we want someone who represents the biggest brand so that we can sell a lot of jerseys, for instance, right? Or that we have instant success on the field because these people are there. If this is a continuum, where was Real Madrid before they made the switch in strategy? Where were they on the continuum? All the way on that side? Are there other clubs who are there?
Definitely.
What are some other examples?
Well, I think in La Liga you have Barcelona, in the EPL you have Manchester.
Manchester City or Manchester United?
Manchester United.
Where's Manchester City? They're there too?
Yeah, but
Is Barcelona there? Why is Barcelona not there? And who said no?
Me, no, I wouldn't put Barcelona there because for many years they've been taking players from the academy.
Right, from La Masia, you mentioned that earlier, right? That's their academy?
Yes, yes.
And so they had 4 or 5 players at least.
Mixture, yeah, they were more of a mixture of developments and buying certain top players, but there were a lot of homegrown players as well.
Exactly. So where was Barcelona then? Were they
in the middle?
In the middle, so we can't see them? They're behind. They're lurking over here. FC Barcelona. Right? They weren't afraid to spend big on players. We mentioned Ibrahimovic is one of the players that they bet on, but they also have a lot of homegrown talent. Messi came from the academy, and Lamine Yamal came from the academy, and Iniesta came from, like a whole bunch of players came from the academy. Right? So they were more in the middle. What are examples of clubs that are all the way to the left? What are some examples there?
Sorry, I think we missed one club on the right side.
Oh, we missed a whole bunch. Feel free to ask.
PSG.
PSG.
for 1 year.
For 1 year?
I know, I said for 1 year.
Okay. PSG in France, because they were willing to spend big on players too. I actually wrote a case on them as well, so you're absolutely right. They spend more on transfer fees than any other club. They spend $220 million on Neymar, euros, and 180 million on Mbappe, who now plays for Real Madrid. And those two players, those two transfers are still the biggest transfers we've ever seen. But what are some clubs that are on the left side? Can we think of examples?
I think there was a Portuguese club, Porto, if I'm not mistaken, who founded their strategy on selling players, so developing players to sell them.
Yeah, FC Porto is an example, a Portuguese club. They've developed a lot of players, and many of them ended up at the bigger European clubs. Other examples?
There's, I think, a few in the EPL, not West Ham, I think your Southamptons, these smaller teams that develop a lot of the players for the big ones. I think your Southamptons, I'm not sure about West Ham now, but yeah, the smaller teams.
Smaller teams
I'd
in
say
the EPL?
Southampton, yes, I'd say that.
Yeah, so Southampton no longer in the Premier League. They've gone down.
Yeah.
But so we have
yeah.
the smaller English teams.
I'm not going to mention names, but I know Scandinavian countries do that a lot. European Scandinavian countries like to get young players and sell them off to the bigger leagues.
Okay, that's an example I did not see coming, but we'll add it. Scandinavian.
Ajax.
Ajax?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. And then
Sorry, what was the other one? Bayern Munich? Okay, Bayern Munich is spending big on players, so they're probably more on that side, but Ajax is the perfect example. You mean the Cape Town version of Ajax, or you mean the Dutch version of Ajax? Okay. You're absolutely right. They are known for taking players and developing them and selling them off to bigger clubs. Absolutely right. I mean, I mentioned Cape Town, but where are the South African clubs? I'm just continuing. Where is Kaizer Chiefs? Where is Sabna? Where are they?
I was going to ask, can you mention our South African clubs? I think Super Sport United, but they now gone back to the web talent developing.
Yeah.
Are there any South African clubs on the right side?
Yes.
Sundowns. Sundowns aren't playing. No, they aren't playing fair. But are they really all the way on the right side? Can they afford to bet on Cristiano Ronaldo in his prime? Can they afford to buy Lamine Yamal from FC Barcelona? Sundowns can? No.
No. But with the Club World Cup money, maybe now.
I've unleashed something by going for South African clubs. Please help me out
I
here.
think that Sundowns is more of a business, so that they would make that investment so that it brings in more popularity and status for them.
Can they get the biggest players on the planet to come play for them?
The president brought Beyonce in South Africa, they can make things happen.
If you bring Beyonce to South Africa, everything is possible, you're right.
They probably would be able to have one or two players at their peak, but the question is, would that player want to be part of our league? So it's really a non-starter.
And why would they say no if they're the player?
Because where are we? Look,
It's a beautiful
I work in the
country.
league, but I mean, come on. In terms of everything that they want to achieve for their career, at that peak of talent, it wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be able to happen here.
Ah, and why is that? Because you're right, but why is that? Because everything is here, right? I mean, we have great talent, we have great natural resources, we have a lot of really great players, so how come?
We don't have the cameras here. We don't have the spotlight on South African football.
There's 4 cameras in this room
No.
alone.
We don't have the world's football spotlight. We are not the world football spotlight.
Okay, okay.
I think Sundowns is going there. The strategy now is working. They've just now being managed by, what's the new agency? Sorry, Rock Nation. So now the strategy is getting there and be seen internationally through the agency now that they've working with.
Okay, so Jay-Z, who owns Rock Nation, he's going to go and meet with Kylian Mbappe, who plays for Real Madrid, and he says, Kylian, you got to come play for Sundowns. And then Kylian Mbappe says, what exactly? Will he say yes to this? I promise to go back to you because you're very patiently waiting with your hand.
Thank you, Prof. I just want to digress a bit,
That's never a good sign.
No, it's from, I just want to relate it to the South African women's football market in terms of what is happening and what it does to the game. Sundowns acquires all these good players, but they acquire them to bench them. Now, what does that strategy do to the South African football competitive advantage in the world? Because my worry is Mbappe can come to Sundowns, but bringing Mbappe to Sundowns, yes, it grows the value of the club, but what does it do to the value of football in the continent? For example, at the current moment, Chan is playing in Tanzania, Kenya, wherever. Now, the challenge is, once clubs get this top talent to come and pay for them, it kills the national value of the teams, because we would not see an African club winning a World Cup anytime because of the way we've done things as Africa in terms of player development. Your FC Portos, the international teams decide to groom players and sell them abroad to make money, but as South Africa, we would want to get readily available talent from the African continent, but it kills our game. I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Okay, that makes sense. So where are the South African clubs on this continuum? Have we figured that out? Because you seem to have very strong feelings on Sundowns, but where are they?
Sorry, Prof. Follow up on the subject this time. So, Jomo, on the actual subject this time. There's a club, it's now playing at a much lower level, Jomo Cosmos. A lot of the top names in South Africa were developed by Jomo Sono.
So but you keep talking about the top names in this country. I'm talking about the top names in the world.
Okay, let's go to the top names in the world.
Have any of the top players in the world played for the South African teams recently?
No.
Why is that?
No, it's
Is it money?
Yeah, it is. It is about money, Prof.
Why is it about the money? Because the people behind Sundowns have lots of money.
No, but remember.
So why can't they get the players? Hang on, I'm going to go with her first. I'm going to come back to you.
I think the reason why they can't is because of the structure of football in this country. When you are a player, you also in effect are a business. If you play for a European league with teams that trade on the European market, it's easier to, increase your value. But in a country where most of our federations are registered as NPOs, it's not easy to get your value for money as a player in this country.
Okay, that's a fair point. I feel some of your pain, right? Because I am from the Netherlands originally, which is where Ajax is based. And for a long time, I have hoped that one day they would get a Messi or a Ronaldo to come play for them. But they've never managed to do that, right? And they're based in Europe with the same trading. So why is that? Ajax, can they move to the other side if they want to? Can Porto move to the other side if they want to? Can they say we're going to try to get a Kylian Mbappe in his prime to come play for us? Or a Cristiano Ronaldo or a Messi? Can they?
I think they can. I mean, they were once on top and winning Champions League. Ajax
In the 1980s, but why no longer?
It's that thing of selling their top players to other clubs. So I don't know why they went there. It's when they were one of the best clubs in Europe at some point. But yeah, they're not making it big now. They're struggling to buy the top players.
So it's the fault of the club. They had the wrong strategy.
I think so.
Okay, so if only the executives were smarter, they would have been able to do it.
Doesn't it come down to the leadership philosophy, where if you're going to put profit before people, and you're going to line your pocket first, the players are the last people to get money. And unfortunately, and I'm not naming any clubs or any sport, but in South Africa, the players get the least of the money. The administrators, the bosses, everybody else gets the money. In fact, coaches don't even get money. So if you're going to attract an international player, they're going to want to know they're going to get paid. If they're going to struggle to get their salaries every month because the bosses are driving around in luxury cars, they're not going to come here.
Okay, so again we're blaming the people that are running these clubs.
Good morning, Prof.
morning.
I think the biggest challenge or the risk factor is currency. It's difficult to retain a player in the sense that loyalty can be bought and also they need to be sustainable. It goes back to how you mitigate the risk, but in terms of the currency factor, it's a bit of a challenge and they are not paid well, so that's why you are unable to retain those players, and the only way to enjoy sport is just to take those ones that you have and sell the ones that can actually make a better living.
Absolutely. That seems to be the predicament of the clubs on this side, right? And by the way, I would argue that all South African clubs are here, just as all Brazilian clubs are here, just as all clubs in Argentina are here. Not because they don't have great players, they have awesome players. Not because they don't have great leaders, they have mismanaged clubs, but they've also have clubs that are really well managed. The key difference, if you look and see the leagues that these clubs are in, if you take one metric, look at the media rights income for the league, and I would bet you that you could predict where the clubs are going to be. Or more specifically, if you are unfortunate that you are a club in a country where the media rights income is relatively low, you are relegated to be on the left side and you can't escape it. If you are fortunate to be a club in a country with high media rights income, Spain, England, Germany, France, Italy, then you have a choice. You can decide that you want to compete for the biggest superstars in the world, in which case you become the Man Cities or the PSGs of this world. Or you can say, actually, I still want to have a significant chunk of player development. So I'm going to be in FC Barcelona and I'm going to be investing in my academy. Or I'm going to be at Dortmund in Germany, and I'm going to be investing in player development, which is where Bellingham was for a while, right? And so the idea is actually pretty simple, but the moment you see it, you cannot unsee it. That the context that you're in as a club determines your talent strategy. If you are in a context in which there's a lot of money coming in, the English clubs are the perfect example. The lowest paid club, the lowest ranked club in the Premier League is making still 100 million euros plus in media rights income. The best club in the Netherlands for a long time was Ajax. They are making 10 million euros in media rights income. That difference you can't overcome. So even if Ajax does everything right, it's not under their control because it's the control of the league and the country, right? And so the context that you're in as a club determines what you can do with your talent strategy. The problem, and I don't claim to be a big expert on South African sports, but the problem for South Africa is the same problem that Brazil and Argentina and the Netherlands and the Scandinavian countries have, is that there just isn't the level of income that makes it possible to invest in the world's best talent. Kylian Mbappé won't play here because he can make 10 times as much money somewhere else, and he could be playing against the other best players in the world if he goes there, right? And so that's why you see this talent drain, and it's almost impossible to stop. Brazilian clubs have been fighting this for years and years and years. Our clubs in Argentina have been fighting this for years, and the difference is only getting worse. And that's why the Netherlands was with the top in the 1980s, but as the differences have increased, as the EPL, as we see in the case, has increased their income, the English Premier League, the difference with the other leagues has gotten bigger, and so the EPL and even the West Hams of this world can pay salaries and pay transfer fees that are multiples of what they can pay, what other clubs can pay, right? So the context that you're in determines the talent strategy that you can have. If you're in a country, and it's not necessarily about how big the country is, because Spain is not that big of a country, and it's actually not that economically wealthy as a country, but soccer is big. The media rights income for soccer is big, and so if you have that income coming in, then you can play on this side if you want to. If you don't have that, you are forced to play here and sell your best players at the peak. If Sundowns were to have the best player in the world playing for them, they won't be able to hang on to them for more than a year because they'll just be picked up by a richer club, right? That's the problem. And Real Madrid, going back to the case, has long been on that side because they felt that they could afford it, but they're starting to see that even Spain might be losing out against England. And so they're increasingly realizing if we don't do something else, then we are going to be here with the Portuguese and the Brazilian and the Dutch and the South African clubs. Right? That's the issue. Are you guys with me? Okay, so do we like the move that Real Madrid is making? Maybe that's not the right question, right? Because maybe they feel they have no other choice. But can they pull it off? Can they transform from a club that was investing big money into these superstars to a club that plays in the middle of this graph? Is that a good position to be in? Usually when we think about strategy, at business schools we say you have to pick what it is that you do. And these clubs in the middle seem to be sort of in between options. So can they really pull this off?
I believe they can, because diversification of strategy is also important, because what happens when you focus on one area and it doesn't work out, you then fall flat. Just like what happened during COVID, a lot of clubs lost a lot. So I believe that the diversification that they are now doing will work in the long run, because they are not relying on one strategy to get their income, but they have diversified.
Because they're not just thinking about talent, but they're also thinking about the stadium, for instance.
Yes, they are thinking about the tours, the development of players, but also partially going to buying the expensive players. Because what has happened in the few past years is that transfer fees have just become ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And therefore, them diversifying is protecting them from losing more money when they buy expensive players.
Do we think other clubs will move that way? Or are they thinking, great, Real Madrid is now gone, that means one less competitor, now we can really go and try to buy all these big players?
I guess it's another lens because of the media rights. Obviously, media is about how many eyes you've got watching and how involved the fan base is.
But also how much they're willing to pay.
Yes.
Right? And this is an important, and maybe I didn't make this clear, because if you think about Argentina and Brazil, football is by far the most popular sport. Right? So it's not that they don't have eyeballs. In fact, they have more people watching as a percentage of the population than pretty much anywhere else. But they don't have the buying power. And so therefore the media, and I mean, there's corruption and other stuff happening there as well, so they probably have been held back. But because they don't have the buying power, they don't have the huge media rights income. The money that you get per person is much less, and that means that the league gets less money and they distribute less money to the clubs.
True. I think in part of what you mentioned in the case study around the league being content creators. So they're like, look, we're in the business of entertainment at the end of the day. And if we are going to continue on this galactical strategy, it's going to get boring because you'll just be like, all the best teams and the best players are always going to win. So how do we add that element of excitement, of intrigue, of entertainment in sport by bringing in the surprise elements, by bringing in underdogs, by bringing in names that are really talented that people may not know. And unfortunately, also the world of sports betting is also going up quite high. So there's that element coming into play too in terms of the willingness to pay for that entertainment and put money into that kind of entertainment.
Prof, I think teams maybe are slowly starting to look at that. I'm not sure because you also look at a PSG getting rid of their superstars and also a few young players like Zaire Emery who've come through the ranks. They won their first Champions League without superstars. You look at players like Ousmane Dembele, a Barcelona reject, and comes there, he now stepping up and wins for the team in a big way. So I think teams are looking to maybe move slowly towards where Barcelona is, where they strike a balance, because it's not always guaranteed that you'll win with the superstars, which you've seen. Also with Real Madrid back in the day, with your Zidanes and your Ronaldos, they didn't really win much with that superstar team. So I think they can move the needle just a bit back, because now we're also starting to see it with PSG.
Yeah, because I think PSG saw the same thing that Real Madrid was seeing, like this is getting awfully expensive. And you guys mentioned Saudi early on, and I think that was a really important point because Saudi is coming in and saying, we're not afraid to spend big money for these superstars. So far, the biggest superstars in their prime have said, I don't know, I'd much rather play a few more years in the top competitions before I go there, but that might change, right? And Cristiano Ronaldo choosing Saudi, I think, is an important signal that these competitions are growing relatively quickly. So the difference between the haves and the have-nots are certainly increasing, and that putting pressure on. And it's, I think, interesting to see that PSG is in France, and France is not the highest income country when it comes to media rights, and so they're probably feeling the effects as well, right? So we see more and more clubs maybe realizing this is a competition for talent that is not sustainable for me. This, by the way, and this is a complicated subject, and we don't need to go there, but this is also why Real Madrid is saying we want to push for structural change. All the elements in the case are related in that sense. They're seeing the English Premier League is running ahead, and they can increasingly compete for their talent, and Saudis coming in and they can compete for their talent, and we can't just sit by and watch our club slip or our league in Spain slip. So there needs to be a structural change. We need to reinvent the European leagues so that we can actually compete, right? So that point of we want to push for a different structure, and the European Super League, the way it was conceived, was not a great success and was widely, I think, panned. But that is why they've been pushing for that, and that's why they're also not giving up on pushing for that, because they realize that might be the only thing that's going to save us in the long run as Real Madrid.
So earlier we were talking about what are the revenue streams clubs have, and we mentioned broadcasting, I think it was on that side. What we didn't mention was talent. Talent is a diversification of revenue streams, and Karabo actually referred to it earlier. When you bring in players and you develop them, you sign them into revenue generating contracts. So no matter if you use them in your first team, great, you've got them in a contract. But if you want to sell them, there's a big revenue stream coming from the development of younger players and sponsoring of the talent. So talent itself is a revenue stream.
Yeah.
And that, although Real Madrid still has the superstars that they will continually bring in, but they're finding that the development of their youth development is delivering for the first team. Plus, if they're not using it in the first team, they have the ability to on-sell them. So there is definitely a diversification of revenue streams in terms of talent.
Yeah, especially if they move more to the left side, right? At the moment, their cost of personnel, which mostly includes the players, is $450 million, right? So they make $830 million in a given year, or 31, but they spend on players $450 million, and that doesn't really, they don't really have a great deal of money coming in from transfer fees. Yes, they sell a few players that don't work out, but because they only sell the players that don't work out, there's not a huge income from that. For these clubs, they cannot exist if they don't sell talent. Ajax, if they don't sell talent to the bigger clubs, they'd be wiped out. FC Porto, if they don't sell, they'd be wiped out. All the Brazilian clubs would be running at a deficit if they don't sell players, right? So they have to, for them it's survival, but for a club that is sitting on really great players and is operating in the big leagues, it could, to your point, be an additional source of income. Do we feel we have a better understanding of how a club like Real Madrid thinks? Or at least the people in charge and how they make money? Okay, good. Let me show you a few, if we could project the slides, let me show you a few summary thoughts, because we've been at it for a while, and you guys deserve a break at some point before we go talk about women's sports, where it's really going to get heated. But if we could lower the slides, let me try to, and those of you who have been there before will know, what I tried to do at the end is actually give you a bit of an update on what happened. I mean, it's a relatively new case, so there's not a whole lot to update you. But then also give you 3 things to think about some more, 3 takeaways. That doesn't mean that these should be the only takeaways, so I always encourage you to jot down a few things that you thought were interesting or you want to think about a little bit more, because by the end of the day you will certainly have forgotten them. So jot them down, maybe not right now, but at the end of the session you want to keep looking at me, otherwise I feel really ignored. But so let me do that and see where we are. So at the end of the case, Real Madrid was